how do you balance the traditional networking, like using a Rolodex, with modern technology of building professional relationships during recruitment, right?
Mhm. And and that's a tough question because I have a couple of different, like, my mind goes left and right with it. I mean, part of it, I think it is, if we look at the past, the Rolodex piece to technology today, even when I got into the technology space and when, technology was coming up, I still thought of it as attracting people. It's about people versus the technology that says, hey, this person may be qualified. I mean, as a recruiter, one of the first things I do when there's an opportunity is, who do I know? I don't think people ask themselves, who do they know anymore? It's like,
Mhm.
what is the computer going to tell me are viable candidates based on keywords? And here are the top 10, and the other 200 I'm not going to go through.
Right. Right.
And that and so when I think about it like that, it is, we're missing the people part of it. I mean, even to this day, you go out on LinkedIn, you have connections. I think you and I talked about this before. I got so many connections, but I don't know where I met them from.
Right.
But I also knew the purpose of it was either me needing something down the road or they needing something down the road. And that connection was the beginning of a relationship, whatever that relationship is or is not. And so when there's an opportunity, I usually go to, who do I know? Who do I know that may know people? And I go to them first.
Yeah.
Even before I think about advertising the role, that's what I do, because to me, recruiting is about building relationships, building contacts that if it doesn't happen today, it may happen tomorrow or it may happen a couple of years from now.
Yeah.
And I think that that's viable, but I also think that generational, the connection tends to break apart because, in my mind, and this is just my opinion, the relationship piece to recruiting is what I just described.
Yeah.
And that's old. I would say old school. New school, the relationship with recruiting is technology. What are the tools that you have? How many postings are you going to do? And when you get too many, what are you going to do about it? And another part of it, it just jumped into my mind is, yeah. And I actually, let me back up for a second, because one of the key things about recruiting is when you do that intake session with the hiring manager. I remember having conversation after conversation after conversation in which the hiring manager says they want them to have this, 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 and this. And so I always ask, well, what if they don't have this but have this? What if they don't have that at all but have the aptitude? And I remember many a hiring man, no, no, I need them to have it now. And I'm like, okay, well, did you have it when you came on board? A lot of people won't ask a person that, but you know my personality. I'll ask a person,
Yeah.
did you have that when you came on board? Well,
Right.
I learned this in college. Okay, well, you learned something and it resonated with you because you had aptitude. I said,
Yeah.
since when have we stopped asking for aptitude versus having a cold hard skill? Now, there's some things, if you're an engineer, you got to know certain things. But even if you look at that, people who have migrated from, old DOS based stuff to where we are today, cloud, I AI, the
Yeah.
whole nine yards, those people are still in the field, but they grew within it. They had the aptitude, and then they learned a little bit more, and then they started playing with these things, and then they became, viable candidates because they have that experience that they didn't have if they were coming straight out, unless you come from college. Even if you come from college now, you're still, you get the foundational things of it. Once you get into the business, it tends to kind of flop a little bit because everybody has a different thought about, whether the after Sam should go after the C, before the C. I mean, we're still using languages that were built eons ago, but sometimes we call them a little differently because they've progressed in terms of the technical aspects. I'm not going to get any
Yeah.
more technology because you know me. After that, I get lost.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, just on that, you touched on the relationship and even being able to influence the hiring manager. Back in the day, just having that Rolodex, typically if you had someone in your Rolodex, you had met them already. You had an actual connection with them. Today, with the technology, you don't have to meet them. You may have connected on LinkedIn, like you said, or on Twitter or Facebook or any social platform and made that connection, but you might not have the influence that you would have back when you had your Rolodex of short list of people or hiring managers or whoever to be able to kind of have that relationship with them. And
Yeah.
so,
Do you remember, little side note, but still relevant? Do you remember when we used to do rousing calls?
yeah, yeah,
So you call into a company that you know has the people that have the skills, and then you get on the phone, and hopefully you get a really nice receptionist, and you go through. Well, I talked to this guy the other day, or this lady the other day, and I can't remember their name, but I knew they were over in technology, and I know if I heard the name, you would tell me, and the person would just start, listen, is it this person? Is this person? Is it this person? And you're just writing it down, writing it down. When you
yeah,
get to the, you know what? I'm sorry, I don't want to waste your time. I got to go back and think about it. Wait
right,
a couple of days, call in, ask for each one of the people that they gave me.
yeah. That's right. No, that's
And
so crazy.
I mean, think about that.
Yeah,
It was, you can't do it now because everything's automated. When you call in, please hit one if you want to know this, or hit the first three letters,
yeah,
and it'll give you an options for this. I mean, I guess there's still a way of doing it, but it's not as way it used to be. And actually, back then, I think it was more fun because you
yeah.
develop relationships, even with those people who are answering the phone. If you call back again, oh yeah, I remember you. Did you find such and such? I
Right.
thought about it. Maybe it was this person.
Right, right, yeah. No, it's crazy. No, it definitely is one of those things where getting those names, getting the right people, it can be more problematic now. In some ways, it's easier because you can go and you got technical tools that you can use to build an org chart or find the people or go see who's in that company and do all those things. So that's cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
what
true.
what about hiring, right? Hiring seems to be a little crazy, especially in this market, right? It's there are lots of candidates, there are lots of jobs posted. Unemployment is still low, and
So they
it's
say.
still taking more, yes, but it's still taking more than 45 days to hire someone. Uh, really? What talk about that? Like, what are some of the things that are affecting the hiring process that might cause that extended hiring number of days to hire?
So, on behalf of recruiters, part of it can be how much you have on your plate. So, if you're doing 15 jobs, 10 jobs, and the jobs may be diverse in and of themselves, they may be, segmented in certain things, but then you have that many more hiring managers. And then you multiply that in terms of the number of interviews that had to happen. And then if you're shooting for that 45 days at max 60 days, you're running with your head cut off. You're trying to contact people. People are maybe contacting you back, maybe slow to contact you back. And that then elongates the time frame. But I do believe that we as recruiters can control that piece to the best of our ability. Because sometimes the hiring managers are keeping us from, moving faster because they have 19 million other things to do. But I think that we get to the point that we understand what we're looking for. We give them the top 5 or 6 people, no more. And that's based on not screening resumes, but actually talking to people
Hmm.
and then going through that process. Now you go through that process, you don't hire anybody. Okay. You're going to elongate again. But that piece is not necessarily bad as long as you keep it going. And hopefully, with each set, if you go through 5, get nobody, the next 5 is going to be a lot closer and maybe actually nails it so that you're right at, 60 days or so in order to close a deal.
Yeah. You talked about working with those hiring managers and sending them the 5 that you said, okay, these are the best ones based on what I know. Uh, that doesn't always end up being the case. I've seen more and more places where these recruiters are more like an order taker. And so who's really driving the hiring process, right? Is
The
it
hiring manager. It
yeah,
ain't the recruiter.
yeah,
It's not the
yeah,
recruiter. And it's that soft side of me. I always good. I found that as many recruiters that I've trained and developed, that once you once you help them build that self-confidence and able to tell a hiring manager no, or tell a hiring manager we should go a different direction. One really good example that I had when I worked for Sabre, the SVP just wasn't happy with recruiting before I got there, and he and I virtually eventually developed a relationship. When he decided he was going to answer my calls, we developed a relationship, and in that relationship, I remember he was asking me. He said, "Okay, I want to open up a search for a VP of some technology. Can't even remember what it was." And I looked at him. I said, "Okay." He told me what the roles are. I said, "Do you not have anybody that's ready for that role?" And he said, "Well, I said, what I mean by ready is not 100% ready, but somebody that is a high performer, somebody that you can, give additional work to fill the gap that they have and put them into that role." And I told him, here's the reason why. It helps you twofold. You One, you find the person internally that can take the role, so you don't have to worry about cultural fit at all.
right.
And then it tells the rest of your organization, hey, they're really serious about promoting from within. Now, being a selfish recruiter, if I don't have to find a VP because we can hire one, and then once that person's moved up, there's another person that's on the bench, or that is viable to take that person's role with a little bit more development. All of a sudden, all the hard to fill jobs are going internal, and then it makes it easier for me, because then I'm looking for an individual contributor with X versus with X, Y, Z, and a little bit of A, B, and C, because we're trying to bring them in at a higher level.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you can, if you're hiring that person that has some of the raw potential to do stuff, and the basic skills that you ask for, it's almost better to, if you're trying to develop people to be a match for your culture, your company, all those things, right? It's
Yep.
um yeah, no,
It's,
that's huge.
it's just developing, people taking time to develop the recruiters to have, have guts about them,
Yeah.
push back when it's time to push back. And I can tell you how many times I've done it. Not that it's always been successful, because certain managers that have certain things in their head, and in my mind, if that's going on, okay, this role is not going to be as high priority as others that I can actually get people through quicker, faster. And in terms of the elongated cycle, that is still my responsibility, but it's not anymore, because that hiring manager is clearly taking control of when they do it, what's next, what they want. And when they say, I'll wait forever for it, okay, then you're really not urgent. So I'll put you on a back burner and let you wait forever until the heat hits the fan. It's like, oh, now you're ready to actually listen to what the professional recruiter just told you. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's a little
Yeah.
bias on my side. I get a little sensitive about that stuff.
Yeah, I like the heat hitting the fan
Yeah.
part of it.
It just, it's recruiters should, recruiting leaders should make sure that they're developing the talent that they have and treat their business as a business, not just as of go find me this. One other example around this, one of the company I worked for, they had these roles open. They were open for a year. They couldn't fill them. Okay. I filled them within 45 days.
Hmm.
But what they didn't know I was doing, and this is something I learned over the years, is I gave them a box. They didn't know I gave them a box, but I
Right.
gave them a box. Somebody that is higher here, somebody that's here, somebody that's here, somebody that's here. And basically, it covered the full spectrum of what they're asking for, but personalities, aptitude then come into play, at least in my mind. So when
Right.
they start the interview process, oh, I really like this person. Then they get to, oh, I really like this person because all this is so, I can really knock out a role with presenting, I say max 6 or 7 people, because if I don't get it right the first box, the second time I'm doing, I'm going to be right on. And
Yeah.
I shared this with the hiring manager with once, and I said, "You didn't realize what I've been doing. At least let me tell you what I've been doing as the reason why we've been successful in finding the talent, and you're happy with it." And so I told him, and he
Uh,
looked at me like, "Yeah." I said, "Those secrets I typically don't share, but it works out. We filled the job, you got who you wanted, blah 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 blah."
yeah. No, that's
So
the
I just,
secret sauce.
yeah, it's just I wish recruiters would, I wish the industry, I'm not gonna say recruiter, I'm gonna wish the industry would see itself as, you know how people see HR, HR is this thing up here that manages and corrects and all the other sort of stuff, learning development, so forth. And then they stick TA under HR, and then it becomes this balloon effect of HR because it's a little different. But then if you take it and you put it in the business, they're going to drive a totally different world of it versus putting it in the middle, in which, and again, I don't know what the reporting structure would be, but given that autonomy to be a business owner and a consultant with deliverables.
Yeah.
And I think if they look at that from a structural perspective, you may probably see things differently or have
Yeah.
the desired results that you want.
No, that
Hopefully,
makes,
that's a good question. I get off on tangents with storytelling.
well, it makes a big difference, right? One of the things that I'm just hearing a lot of people talk about and seeing people writing about it. You think of this concept of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? How does that concept or that principle, how do those principles apply to the candidate experience and your recruiting approach?
All right, I'm gonna use profanity. Damn it! If you say that you're going to call somebody, call somebody. If you say you're going to do it, do it. Do not do it,
Yeah.
because at some point in time in your career, you're going to find yourself on that other side, and you're not going to understand. And
Right.
so, even if you take it out of the context of work, if you commit to your significant other that you're going to do something, you're going to do it. If you don't do it, your significant other is going to remind you, "Oh, you said you were going to cut the grass, or you said you were going to do something, and you hadn't done it yet." And
Right.
then you think about it. What are the consequences around that? So either somebody's not going to be happy, either, more importantly, hopefully you learn, okay, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I think that that piece is missing in terms of follow up, in terms of, and I think I told you this. I've gone through at least 3 people within the last, I don't know, 2 months that said they were going to do something and then didn't do it.
Right.
I mean, say it in public that they're going to do it and then didn't do it. Um, and if they don't realize that, actually, it 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 makes visible a part about them that other people are seeing, and you never know when those tables flip. It's kind of like, just do what you say you're going to do when you do it. Even if you can't do it by phone, send a text. If you can't do it by text, send an email. If you're
Right.
good at smoke signals and somebody can read it, it's the smoke signal. The
Yeah.
people that you're dealing with, they're humans. Everybody will find themselves in a position that they thought that they would never be in,
Yeah.
and they're there, and then they well, why isn't this happening? Why isn't that happening? I mean, I think about that all the time, given the last year. But the one thing I could say about me is, it's been so long since I didn't do something that I said I was going to do, that I can't even think of something that I said that I was going to do that I didn't do,
Yeah.
because I know the importance of it to people, not to the job, not to the company, to people. You just want to be treated how you want others to treat you.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. Right now, with so many people applying to jobs, recruiters are overloaded, overwhelmed. And you can take this from either perspective. When it comes to applying to jobs, right? If you're the candidate, there's some things that are happening. Your application goes in, and then information's getting parsed. If you look at that from, say, the candidate perspective or the recruiter perspective, um, what would you share about things that are important about that application, knowing that information is going to get parsed initially anyway, way before you ever talk to anybody?
So I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't know because I have a bias, and my bias is if I take the time, if I pay somebody some money to put together my resume, and when I get the result, when I get the results of that agreement that I had, and then I see things happening, okay, I get it. I'll always send it to somebody else to come up with something that I can't come up, so that I I, I get the visibility that I need. But then when I see that something's changed a year later, which I have, I don't understand why.
Mm,
Because if it's still technology, but now it's smart technology, then I would assume that smarter technology would give me some of the same results as the not so smart technology. You know, does
right.
it make sense what I'm trying to say? And you know, I so the other thing I think of, the second part of the question is, then when I apply, be it LinkedIn, be it any other tool, I look for people that I know that may be working at that company, and I ask them, "Hey, I apply for this job. Do you mind championing or referring me to whoever's running that piece of business?" And you'd be surprised that probably out of the, I'm gonna make up a number because I think it was higher than this, about 60 people that I've done that with, I have not, over the last year, have not landed an interview, not the job, but an interview going that direction. And I don't know why.
Right, right. Yeah. Now that's interesting. That is interesting.
Because, the next step, that step was, instead of applying, apply, but then reach out to your connections, because that's the purpose of it being there. And your connections are telling you, hey, I can help you out, or no, I can't, but maybe I know somebody else. Now, there's only a handful of people that I know that are close to me that do that.
Right,
You
right.
be so it's
Yeah,
just, you would think that, okay, that should at least get me in the door.
right, right.
Um, but I have not seen that paying off as it should be. And again, not to get me a
Yeah.
job, but to get me that audience so that I can have the conversation. If I'm going to screw it up, then let me screw it up.
Right, right.
You know?
Yeah. And I wonder, because that used to be a really effective way to get your let your network work for you, right?
Yep.
And nowadays, maybe it's because people are so inundated. I mean, I've had people I've reached out
Yep.
to, and it's really delayed responses. And I'm wondering if it's just because of the volume, the sheer volume of information. I don't know the answer either. I
Yeah.
do not know the answer. It's kind of
If,
great.
if you think about the sheer volume, because we can use that as a reason, it's not an excuse. We can use that as a reason.
Yeah,
Um, I think I ran into a person once. I actually used to work at Walmart. He works for the federal government now. He was on LinkedIn, but I could tell he only had like 500 followers and or 500 connections. But I sent them a note anyway.
yeah,
2 weeks pass, and all of a sudden, I pops up and he says, "Hey, Antoine, I'm sorry. I don't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and so I just saw your response, and so a couple of days later, I responded to him, but I also didn't expect him to respond back. Anything in the federal government, they're not really playing hard on LinkedIn
right.
or any other thing. Everything has to go through a process. So I get that. But then for other people who are there but never there, but then if you look at whether they respond and you look at that they're writing stuff out on LinkedIn, like what's the gap? You're there, it flags you to tell you that you have these unread messages. So why would you not do it? Even if you have nothing to offer, say, I have nothing to offer.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. Good point. Just
And
very.
so, I think that, and I realized this the other day too, because I said, apparently I have an account with ladders and a couple other things. I'm like, I don't even remember having these accounts. This was eons ago. And I'm
Is
like,
ladder
oh,
still a thing?
yeah, it's still a thing. And so I said, well, hell, let me go out there and, put my I apparently it recognized me, but I couldn't remember my password.
Oh,
But then it says, okay, go ahead and pay blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why do I have to pay? It's because I got this problem with LinkedIn too, but that's a little different subject. Why do I have to pay you to post my resume for you to find me to present opportunities to me that
yeah.
people have posted? Because the companies are paying you to allow them to post. So why do you need money from me?
Yeah.
And it's funny because with LinkedIn, I get these say, hey, upgrade your account. And they would be disappointed because if I do that, all I'm doing is going to Microsoft's site because I'm an alumni, and it's going to be a lot cheaper than what they're offering to other people. But what is it going to get me? It says, well, you'll get more visibility to the hiring communities. Why is that so?
Right.
Why do I have to pay you to be visible when I'm being visible? And if the client, the people that are paying you to post the jobs are getting success off of finding people, why do I need to pay? And I'm talking
Right.
about just for posting a job, looking for a job, not
Right.
all the other stuff that they offer.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That hit me too. A lot of things
Yeah.
hit me this year because it's been a rough year for sure.
Y
Um,
yeah, yeah, now well, it's and some of it's, uh, you have to have a routine to keep yourself moving, right? If you think about leaders, in this space that have stayed here, have weathered the ups and downs, which you have done, they've got a something that allows them to kinda keep moving in this space and evolve a little bit. What's the and sometimes people say, well, it's because you're drinking your own Kool-Aid. Can you talk a little bit about, drinking your own Kool-Aid and when you drank your own Kool-Aid or didn't drink it or rejected it or whatever, you know?
you stick with the Kool Aid analogy. If you make Kool Aid and you give it to somebody, but yet you haven't tasted it, and we're going to use Kool Aid because you can either really make good Kool Aid back in the day, or it's going to be not so good Kool Aid.
And
And
everybody's got an opinion on the Kool-Aid.
right, right. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I need a sweet or I don't need a sweet, or if it's too sweet, or I can't stand grape. But it's the whole concept of drinking your own Kool-Aid is identifying what that taste is to you, and then understanding that that taste may be different for somebody else. It's still Kool-Aid, but it's like how much sugar. If you put sugar, do you use something else besides sugar in order to sweeten it?
Yeah.
It's so many other things because everybody's Kool-Aid can be different.
Yeah.
And we drink when we talk about drinking our own Kool-Aid, it's are we satisfied with that which we taste? And if you are, but you're still not getting the results, I go back to this is Kool-Aid really Kool-Aid?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good
That's a
point.
that's a big hypothetical. Let's go talk philosophy and everything else. But it's like, is Kool-Aid really Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
And the FDA says Kool-Aid's bad for you. You make your teeth fall out. There's too much sugar. You shouldn't have your kids drink Kool-Aid so much. And it's like the things that were good are no longer as
Yeah.
good.
What
So we have to transform. You know,
yeah.
it's just like finding a unicorn, the purple squirrel. How many other things have we used of finding talent that we believe just can't be found?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's we put a label on everything, right? I mean, if you think about the Kool-Aid thing's a big one because everybody's so particular about their Kool-Aid and everybody's got their own brand of Kool-Aid, right?
Yep.
And we've heard it at work, we've heard it in your company. Oh, yeah, he's drinking the Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah. It's just it's just how we could just it's amazing how we as humans take things and make it into something that's for us. And Kool-Aid is generational because I
Yeah.
don't think they use Kool-Aid anymore. I don't know what they use, but
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't
know anymore.
yeah. So, generation to generation, you know, things change, recruiting changes, but the core of recruiting never changes. It's
Right.
about relationships, finding the right people at the right time for the right roles. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Remember sourcing. I always used to tell folks, well, what is your sourcing? They'd say, what does your sourcing team do? We require qualified, interested, and available people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That never changes.
Yep.
Never
That's
changes because that's the core.
that's
Now,
exactly it.
I would challenge some people that didn't work for me to ask them that question. Okay, well, what's the core when you're sourcing? If you just say, "Well, I want to find a talent with such and such," yeah, you want to find the talent, but you want to find available interest, and the other one I always forget.
Qualified.
Those are the three things that are core to what you do. You can build on top of that,
Yeah.
but if you
Yeah.
don't start here and you want to start up here, you're missing down here.
Yep.
My
Yeah,
opinion.
that's exactly it. Well, and I mean, it's just perspective, right? You ask two different recruiting leaders about sourcing, and one's going to have a perspective on one's going to have a different perspective on it. Um, Even in this market, if you think about perspectives, it's so critical. And I think there are two big perspectives, right? There's what's the perspective of the person who's employed, and maybe they're looking for a new deal, and the person who's unemployed, and maybe they're looking for a deal, any deal that that's going to keep the cat food off the table.
Yep.
How do you deal with that?
Um, this is going to sound weird, but I'm thinking off the top of my head. You become blind. So it's whether they're working or not working, whether they're flexible, whether they're more open because they need to have, you know, food on the table. If we're still sticking with the core of who they are, they, they have the aptitude, they have the knowledge, they have the ability. Now they're just looking for an opportunity to execute that. And they're not currently in an opportunity. If you're currently in an opportunity, it's still those same three things. It changes when it comes to the close, because that other person who has a job may be actively looking all over the place, and we know that happens. So that close may be harder. That sell piece may be harder. For that person that doesn't have a job, you don't have to sell them. All you have to do is offer them a job, and they're there.
Right. Yeah.
That would be the differences between it.
Yeah.
And so, I it's the old adage of you have to be hungry in something that you want. So you have to desire it. And desire, if you're not hungry, you're not going to eat. If you're hungry, you're going to eat.
Yeah, I like the way you say that. One of my favorite motivational speakers is Les Brown, and he's like, "You got to be hungry." Yeah.
You got to be, because if you're not, it's like animals. It's just like animals.
Yeah.
If the lion is not hungry, then the lion's just going to chill. They'll
Yeah.
sit there and do what the lioness tell them to do. But when it comes food time, the lion's going to get up, and he knows he has to successfully find food,
Yeah.
not only for him because he's the last to eat, but for the lioness and the cubs so they can eat, which then continues, the tribe. The tribe is
Yeah.
oh, you know, they're in a better
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, they keep that whole pride going. I thought the pride, I thought the female lions that went out and did all the hunting and working. And then the male lion just came up and ate his fair share.
You know what? As much as I've watched TV lately, the female controls. The males fight amongst each other as to who is going to, create little lions.
Yeah.
I'm doing that in a very politically correct
Yeah,
way.
this is a
Doing it
rated
in little
G. This is a
lions.
G show.
Right. But then the female lioness get to choose, even out of whoever fought here, who gets to do what. Once that's done, they don't want anything else to do with the male. The male waits for the next cycle to come around, as long
Yeah.
as he provides food and so forth. But the lioness actually controls and runs it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's crazy, man. Well,
So
Antoine, I know we've been on here. We could chat about anything forever, man. But I feel like you've shared some really, really good insight on just your expertise and your opinions on leadership, the recruiting process, different perspectives, and I think more importantly that just that general mindset that people would have.
There, there's one thing that I want to say coming out of my mouth from a closing, and that is each and every talent acquisition leader needs to drink their own Kool-Aid. And by that, I mean the technology that they're using, how you're letting people apply, the information that you're asking for. If you haven't gone out there and done it, if you haven't, then you don't really know what's going on, because we should be past the point of having people create an account to apply and then asking the same questions at times 3 times over because it's in LinkedIn. And then when you get passed over to here, then it's in their system. That is not a pleasant experience.
Right, right. We definitely need to dig into that one, maybe partially on our next
Yes.
conversation, because that's a huge one on that candidate experience, man, and annoying as can be.
Yep.
So
Well,
yeah.
as always, so we'll make that our next topic.
Okay. All right. I'm sure we'll come up with some interest. I'm sure you'll come up with some interesting points that we want to cover on these topics. So I really appreciate you doing this, man. It's been great. So
Look, thank you, Cody. I appreciate it.